I had noticed it for weeks before I finally admitted it to myself. Commander Aelira Voss did everything in her power to avoid me. It wasn't obvious to most people. To the crew of Outpost Helios, she was composed, precise, and unshakably professional, the kind of alien officer the Coalition loved to parade as proof that humanity and the Aurelian Union could coexist. Silver blue skin, eyes like refracted starlight, posture as sharp as a blade. She spoke to diplomats, engineers, soldiers, even janitorial staff with the same calm authority. Everyone except me. When I entered a room, she found a reason to leave. When I spoke during briefings, she never met my eyes. If our duties forced us into close proximity, she kept a careful, almost painful distance, exactly 3 steps, as if measured. It wasn't fear. It wasn't disgust. It felt like restraint, and that made it worse. I was just a human systems analyst, a glorified problem solver assigned to Helios because I understood hybrid Aurelian Terran tech better than most. I wasn't important enough to offend a commander, or powerful enough to threaten one. Which left only one question burning in my mind during every sleepless night beneath the station's artificial stars. Why me? Helios floated at the edge of known space, a joint research outpost built inside the hollowed shell of a dead moon. Outside its reinforced windows, ion storms curled like luminous serpents, painting the void in violent colors. Inside, life went on in quiet routines until something broke or someone snapped. I told myself to let it go, to be professional, to respect whatever invisible boundary she'd drawn. But curiosity is a dangerous thing, especially when mixed with loneliness and too much time to think. The day I finally asked her, the station was on emergency power. A solar surge had ripped through the outer arrays, and half the outpost was sealed behind bulkheads. I was rerouting auxiliary systems when the lights flickered and dimmed to a soft amber. The corridors emptied as personnel rushed to assign stations. That was when I saw her. Commander Voss stood alone in the observation ring, hands clasped behind her back, staring out at the storm. The energy outside illuminated the faint fractal patterns along her skin, marks of rank among Aurelians, I'd learned. They pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat. She hadn't noticed me yet. I could have turned around. I should have. Instead, I walked forward. My boots echoed louder than usual in the near silence. She stiffened instantly. I saw it, the subtle tightening of her shoulders, the shift in weight. She knew I was there. "Commander," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Do you have a moment?" For a long second, she didn't turn around. When she finally did, her expression was carefully neutral, but her eyes betrayed something else. Not annoyance, not boredom, tension. "If this concerns the power grid," she said, "submit a report. I am occupied." "It doesn't," I replied. My heart was pounding now. "This is personal." That did it. Her gaze sharpened, and she took one deliberate step back, increasing the distance between us. "I do not engage in personal discussions with subordinates," she said. "I know," I said quickly. "I wouldn't ask if it wasn't eating me alive." Silence stretched between us, broken only by the distant hum of failing systems. I took a breath. "Have I done something to offend you?" Her eyes flickered, just for a fraction of a second.
"No," she said.
"Then why do you avoid me?" The words hung in the air like a dropped glass, waiting to shatter. She turned away again, facing the storm. When she spoke, her voice was lower, stripped of its usual command. "You should not be here," she said. "Please leave."
I didn't.
"With respect, Commander," I said, "you've avoided me for months. If I've crossed a line, I need to know. I work better when I understand the variables." That earned a bitter sound, almost a laugh. "You humans," she murmured, "always seeking patterns." always believing there is an answer that will make things manageable. She faced me again. This time, she didn't step back. "Do you truly wish to know why?" she asked. "Yes," I said, without hesitation. Her jaw tightened. The markings along her skin flared faintly, reacting to an emotion she was struggling to suppress. "Very well," she said. "But once I tell you, you cannot unhear it." "I understand." She studied me for a long moment, as if committing my face to memory. Then she spoke words that would haunt me forever. "Because every time I look at you," she said, "I see the man who is destined to die because of me." The station seemed to tilt. "What?" I whispered. Her composure cracked, just slightly. "Aurelian commanders undergo something your species does not," she said. "A neural attunement to probability streams. Not precise visions of the future, but echoes. Emotional certainties tied to possible outcomes." I had heard rumors of Aurelian precognition, but the coalition always downplayed it. Unreliable. Symbolic. Cultural myth. "This is not myth," she said, as if reading my thoughts. "It is burden." She turned fully toward me now. Her eyes shone brighter, reflecting not the storm outside, but something burning inside her. "I have felt many echoes in my life," she continued. "Battles. Losses. Sacrifices. They come and go like distant thunder. But you," her voice faltered, "you are constant." I swallowed. "You're saying you think I'm going to die?" "No," she said softly. "I know you are." A chill crept down my spine. "In one future," she said, "you are crushed beneath collapsing hull plates. In another, you are exposed to radiation while sealing a breach. In another still," she closed her eyes, "you die saving me." My mouth felt dry. "And you avoid me because attachment strengthens the echo," she said. "The more I care, the more likely it becomes. Aurelian doctrine is clear. When a probability bond forms, we distance ourselves to weaken it." I stared at her, trying to process the weight of her words. "So you've been protecting me?" I asked. Her lips pressed together. "I've been trying." The irony hit me hard. All this time, I'd thought I was being rejected, dismissed. Instead, I was being shielded. "Commander," I said quietly, "you can't carry that alone." Her eyes snapped to mine. "You do not understand. Every path where you survive is thinner than a filament. And every day we serve together, it frays further." "Or maybe," I said, "it only seems that way because you believe it." She shook her head. "Belief has nothing to do with it, doesn't it?" I stepped closer, closing the distance she'd maintained for months. She didn't move away this time. "You said these are probabilities, not certainties." "Yes." "Then there's a chance you're wrong." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "There is a chance I am right." The lights flickered again. A warning klaxon sounded faintly, signaling a structural failure in one of the outer rings. I glanced at the ceiling. Sounds like the station doesn't care about our philosophical debate. She straightened instantly, command instincts taking over. "Report to your post." "After this," I said, "because if I walk away now, I'm not sure I'll come back with the courage to finish this conversation." She hesitated. "Say I accept what you're saying." I continued. "What then? You keep avoiding me? Pretend I don't exist until one of your echoes comes true?" "That would be the safest course," she said. "For who?" I asked. "You or me?" Her silence was answer enough. I softened my tone. "Aelira," I said, using her given name for the first time. "You don't get to decide my fate without my consent." Her eyes widened slightly. Aurelians valued consent deeply. It was woven into their culture. I'd struck a nerve. "You are already part of it," she said, "whether you wish to be or not." Then let me choose how, I said. If I'm going to die someday, I'd rather it not be, because we were both too afraid to exist in the same room. The klaxon grew louder. The station shuddered. She looked torn between doctrine and something raw, something personal. You are asking me to gamble with your life, she said. No, I replied. I'm asking you to live it with me. For a long moment, she didn't speak. The storm outside flared, bathing us in blue-white light. Then she did something utterly unexpected. She reached out and took my hand. Her skin was warm, humming faintly with bioenergy. The moment our fingers touched, the markings along her arm flared brilliantly. She gasped, not in pain but in shock. The echo, she whispered. It's changed. My heart leapt. Changed how? She looked at me, awe and fear mixing in her eyes. I can no longer see your death. Relief surged through me, dizzying and sudden. I see uncertainty, she said slowly. A future that refuses to resolve. I smiled weakly. Sounds like life to me. She laughed then, a soft, disbelieving sound I'd never heard from her before. The laughter faded as the station lurched violently. An automated voice echoed through the corridor. Hull breach in observation ring. Evacuate immediately. I barely had time to react before the floor buckled. A section of the viewport shattered, emergency force fields snapping into place a split second before vacuum could claim us. Debris rained down. I was thrown sideways, slamming into a support beam. Pain exploded through my shoulder. Aelira, I shouted. She was on the ground, pinned by a fallen strut, struggling to free herself. Without thinking, I ran to her. Don't, she cried. The echo. Forget the echo, I said, bracing myself and lifting the strut with everything I had. Something tore in my muscles, but the beam shifted enough for her to slide free. She scrambled up, grabbing my arm as the deck continued to collapse. Structural integrity is failing, she said urgently. We must go now. We ran, dodging falling panels, alarms screaming around us. At the last bulkhead, a blast door jammed halfway down. I can crawl under, I said, already dropping to the floor. It will not reopen, she warned. Then this is where we test fate, I said, grinning through the pain. I slid under just as another explosion rocked the ring. She followed, barely making it through before the door slammed shut behind us. We collapsed in the corridor beyond, gasping for breath. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she turned to me, eyes shining with something I could finally recognize. Hope. You were meant to die there, she said softly. I felt it, and yet you didn't. I shrugged. Guess the universe got confused. She studied my face, her expression no longer guarded. Perhaps, she said, the future is not something to be avoided. I met her gaze, feeling the weight of her words settle into something warm instead of terrifying. So, I said, no more avoiding me? She smiled, truly smiled for the first time. No, she said. No more. Outside, the storm began to fade, its violent colors dissolving into calm starlight. And for the first time since I'd boarded Outpost Helios, the future didn't feel like something waiting to kill me. It felt like something waiting to be written. The silence that followed our narrow escape stretched longer than either of us expected. The emergency lights cast jagged shadows along the walls, and I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Aelira, Commander Voss, Aelira, sat a few feet away, still clutching the arm I'd supported during the collapse. Her silver-blue skin shimmered faintly in the dim light, as if the trauma of the storm had charged her in some alien way. Finally, she spoke, and her voice was soft but steady. Humans, you are unpredictable. I gave a half-smile, trying to mask the trembling in my limbs. You're telling me that now, after months of avoidance? She looked at me and allowed herself the slightest tilt of her head. Perhaps. I see now that it was not just your unpredictability. It was also your courage. The echo predicted my death if I did not distance myself, but it could not account for persistence or loyalty. I shook my head in disbelief. You avoided me to protect me, and here I thought I'd been insulted. You cannot understand, she said, though there was a vulnerability in her tone I hadn't seen before. The Aurelian mind perceives probabilities in ways humans cannot. Every interaction, every emotional bond, it shifts the currents of potential futures. You were a constant variable in the equation. My duty was to minimize risk. And yet, I said, sitting up slowly and wincing as my shoulder protested, you failed. Or maybe, you succeeded in a way neither of us predicted. Her markings flared faintly, almost imperceptibly, as if acknowledging my words. Perhaps. The storm, the collapse, the echo, it is now ambiguous. Uncertain. I leaned back against the wall, exhaling the breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. So we live. Together. For now. Aelira studied me, her gaze piercing yet gentle. For now, she repeated, as if tasting the words and weighing their implications. This does not guarantee survival, but it does create possibility.
Possibility.
That word felt heavier than any threat, brighter than any star. For the first time since arriving on Helios, I felt like I had a future, not a predestined path to death, but something flexible, something we could shape together. The alarms eventually died down, leaving only the low hum of the station's emergency power. We stayed in the corridor for a while, catching our breath, letting the magnitude of what had just happened sink in. Finally, I broke the silence. Aelira, I need to ask you something else. Something important. She raised an eyebrow, wary but willing to listen. Go ahead. I took a deep breath. Will you, let me be part of your life? Not just as a subordinate, not just as a variable in your probabilities,
but as me.
As a person who chooses to stand beside you, even if it's dangerous. Her eyes softened, and for the first time, I saw more than the cold precision of a commander. I saw someone who wanted connection but feared the consequences. I have not allowed myself such attachments, she admitted. But I see now that the echo does not dictate all. The future is not immutable. Perhaps we can decide it together. I reached out, and this time it was mutual. She took my hand fully, not as a gesture of caution, but as a promise. Her skin was warm, almost luminous, and the pulse of her markings synchronized faintly with my own heartbeat. I felt something shift inside me, something I had never felt before, safety, belonging, and a connection deeper than fear. The observation ring was in ruins, but the stars beyond the shattered windows were intact. Out there, in the infinite void, the universe stretched endlessly, unpredictable and wild. And somehow, standing beside Aelira, I realized that unpredictability was no longer frightening, it was liberating. We rose together, leaning on each other as we made our way back to the main hub. The station systems were slowly coming back online, and crew members began emerging from their quarters, shaken but alive. Whispers followed us. Humans and Aurelians alike had heard about the collapse and our narrow escape. But I barely noticed. All I could focus on was her hand in mine, the warmth of her presence, and the realization that the future was finally ours to face, together. As we reached the central command deck, she stopped and looked out at the void once more. I cannot promise the echo will never return, she said quietly. But perhaps the unpredictability of life, of choice, is what gives it meaning. I squeezed her hand. Then let it come. Whatever it brings, we face it together. Aelira's lips curved into a smile. Not a command, not a calculated gesture, but a genuine expression of relief and hope. For the first time, the distance she had maintained for months evaporated completely. Outside, the ion storm had faded, leaving only the serene glow of distant stars. The station hummed gently, resilient and enduring, like us. And in that moment, I realized that sometimes the greatest survival isn't about escaping death. It's about finding someone who refuses to let you face it alone. She turned to me one last time, eyes shining with quiet certainty. Do you understand now why I avoided you? I do, I said, smiling despite the ache in my body. And I'm glad you did, because it brought me here, to this moment, with you. And for the first time since the day I arrived at Outpost Helios, I believed the future was no longer a chain, but a story we could write together. We walked into the command deck side by side, two beings from different worlds, yet bound by choice, courage, and the fragile but unbreakable thread of connection. Outside, the stars waited, and this time, we would face them together.